I'm Edie Lush. I'm here in the Hub Culture studio. It's summer, right? Well, spring 2022. Quite interesting to be here in the spring, right?
It's rather nice, isn't it?
I like it. Huw van Steenis, he is the co-chair of the WEF's Financial Council. Have I got that right?
Yeah.
So quite an extraordinary moment in time. We're coming out of the pandemic, which of course is still present in many parts of the world. We have a war in Ukraine. We have concerns about energy prices, food prices. There's concerns about stock prices. And at the same time, there is recognition now that the climate emergency needs to be solved by more than governments, and companies are stepping up. There's opportunity there, but there's also quite a few challenges. Now, you and I have talked about this before. Why don't you give me the state of play from where you see it at the moment?
Well, look, I think we are moving into a sort of a new phase of green investing. It's more difficult, it's more complicated, and the pace and trajectory of decarbonisation is probably shifting. But I think what's exciting is that the investment community and corporates know there is both opportunity and risk. And so, for instance, there are 151 new climate funds set up last year.
And how many of those are investing in emerging markets?
Well, alas, this is one of the key issues for us, very, very few. Most of them are still thinking about Western decarbonisation. And certainly one of our big challenges is to try and mobilise more capital to emerging markets. Because of that 3 to 4 trillion a year we need to invest in energy transition, 2/3 of it is in the emerging markets.
So that is extraordinary, right? 3 to 4 trillion a year to 2030 or potentially even 2040. Most of that needs to be done in emerging markets. It's not happening yet. Is there a push that we could give to some of these funds to make the money go elsewhere?
Well, possibly. I mean, look, I think that, so first is we are at least enabling and fostering more mobilization in the West.
Yeah.
And some of my focus is trying to think about what are the standards, what are the nudges which help? And so I'm really encouraged that a growing number of countries are mandating disclosure of emissions by companies. Most recently, Canada, this week alone.
Okay.
And obviously, in the last few weeks, the SEC has put out its own suggestions. So I think climate disclosure is becoming standard. And I think the more we have the data, the better investment decisions, the better portfolios we can make. So I'm encouraged by that. But I'd like to see that in emerging markets too. But it's then also about trying to find the right structures. One of the big issues for emerging markets is some of the credit risk and foreign exchange risk. So we're thinking a lot about the right structure and the right envelope to send that money, not just thinking about the source of money.
One of the things I was speaking to Julia Hoggett from the London Stock Exchange, and they have the voluntary carbon market, which is their gift, or if you like, towards or providing some of the pipes and plumbing in order to funnel money. Carbon credits, that's one sort of thing, but it's not all of the answer, right? Because it's about, as you say, decarbonizing your at least scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. And to just de-jargon that, tell me what that means.
Scope 1 and 2 is the emissions that your own firm creates directly and indirectly. So,
Okay, so you're encouraged that we're seeing that happen. One point to note on is the data all now standard? Because we've spoken about that before.
The data is not standard. The best we can have is a family resemblance. But but as an equity analyst for 20 years, we never get perfect data.
Okay.
And we shouldn't let that be an imposition. We just need to get better data to make better portfolio decisions. So I'm encouraged that data is starting to come through. But let's be clear. I think what's very different about this Davos from when we were last here, ED 2 years ago, is the pecking order of the energy transition. I think there's much more focus now on energy transition financing and far less on glad handing around ESG.
Okay.
And I also think there's much more focus on this is a difficult transition.
Yeah.
Condoleezza Rice used to have 3 E's. There's focus on the economy, energy security, and environmental concerns. And how you triage between those three is really the heart of the debate. Look how Germany got it wrong in terms of those three. And I think each country and each company is thinking through how best to manage those 3 issues.
We're on a very short road to COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh. From your perspective, what needs to come out of COP27 in order to call it a success from a climate finance perspective?
Yeah, so I'm obviously focused much more on financial services. So within the constellation of these 450 firms who've come together. There's a focus on better data. That's one of the key objectives, and getting more companies to disclose on a voluntary or mandatory basis. We want every firm to have a pathway, and so there's a lot of work going on of what does a good pathway look like. And third is, quite frankly, is this point about mobilization. And I do think that one of the disappointments of COP26, as we both saw there, was very little progress on emerging market mobilization. And what the financial consortium is doing is trying to focus on 3 particular countries, of which South Africa is one, to try and get real life progress on the ground. And then from that experience, how can we then leverage it to other countries? Okay,
final question for you, Huw. The question of divestment versus engagement. So do you just say, right, this company is still in oil and gas, we're pulling our money out, versus we're going to come in as an active investor, we're going to try to work with them to keep them on the transition pathway? I'm assuming you're on the engagement side, but what challenges does that bring?
Yeah, I'm very much, look, I wear multiple hats, so it depends, and so an endowment I'm sitting on does have a divestment as its policy goal, but that's obviously there and our choice. But I think for the industry as a whole, it has to be out of engagement. If we really need 3 to 4 trillion, we need all hands on deck. And I think it's just as important. I think one of the big debates this week at Davos will be how to help companies and the laggards transition. And if they're authentically transitioning and making a good effort, we should help them. And if they're not, then obviously it's for investors to choose how they engage on those companies.
Huw van Steenis, thank you for stopping by the slightly warm Hub Culture studio here in Davos 22. And I'm Edie Lash.
Thank you.